I'm sure, as always, you'll let me know if you can't. Okay, let me just get rid of this for now. There we go. That should make it better. In theory, welcome, everyone. Yeah, so to the Christmas special, last month of the year, 22nd of December. So I'm just going to play around with my mic settings for a second, so I can hear myself in feedback. Yeah, quite a lot of people saying there's echo. There's 1 second. That's muted. That's muted. Don't know why it's doing that. Hopefully, I think if we carry on, it will disappear. It normally does. So, in fact, let me get rid of my face.
Hopefully, you can still hear me. Can you hear me now? Is that better? You'd have thought after the weeks and weeks and weeks of doing this, I'll be able to do it. But obviously that's not the case. When I was at Justin's, we had proper lapel mics, which made it a lot easier. I'm sort of jiggling mics here, and I don't think that really works. Okay, yep, everyone's saying they can hear me. So we'll just have a look in the chat. We've got 80 odd people watching, which is brilliant. Good morning, everyone. We've got Chris, USN17. We've got Art from a cold Zuidland, New Zealand. Hope I'm not butchering that pronunciation, but I usually am. Good morning, Jed. Good morning, Andrew. Mike, John, David, and everyone. Morning, Mike. How are you doing? Daft time of year to go on the wagon. I'd say it's probably the best time of the year to go on the wagon. But while I did say we are looking at a White Metal Wagon kit, we should also be looking at if I can. You probably can't hear me when I said that. You probably have no idea what I just said because the cameras and the microphones don't seem to want to talk today, which is really annoying. But anyway, we will get going. I'll try to make it more professional and have 2 cameras so I can show you what I'm doing. But obviously, it doesn't seem to want to work. Sound off when you switch cameras. That's annoying. I was really hoping that I could get 2 cameras working so I could get, you know, I could show you what I was doing with more handheld camera. That's really, really irritating. I don't know why it's doing that. But hopefully if this one still works, we'll be good. Anyway, we'll crack on. So I've not looked at this kit yet, but I have built a couple others that are very similar. So normally the first thing I do, since I am a bloke, is I just chuck the instructions away. You don't really need them for these. So it looks like you get a plastic floor. Morning, Steve. How are you doing? I hope you are well. Thank you for joining us. In case you missed what we're doing, we're just having a look at a little soldering tutorial of how I like to do it. It's not the definitive way of how to do it, but it's just the way I do it, way I found works best for me. And then we might have a little look and review of some locomotives if you want, which I think went down quite well in the polls yesterday, which I didn't know, ran a couple of polls on our social medias and on the Railway Modelers Club just to see what people wanted to see from us. and that vote got voted quite highly, so we'll probably have a look at some of them later on, if our microphones decide they want to keep on functioning, which I really hope they do, because that would be very polite of them. Okay, so I can't really show you because when I switch cameras, everything seems to die, but I have a soldering iron here, which is a Atten 937. I don't know what wattage it is, I have forgotten, but it's a lovely iron. It's variable temperature. It's very important that you have a variable temperature soldering iron with white metal kits, and it's also very important they have a good quality variable one. The cheaper ones that you can buy, when you lower the power, when you lower the output on them, it actually lowers the electrical current going in. That's how it, like a dimmer switch, that's how they vary the temperature, is all you're doing is just taking down the power that's being put into the iron. With good quality ones that you need for white metal kit building, is they actually, I don't know the technical words for it, but they actually keep the same level of power, but they just heat the iron tip to a lower degree. So you still have the power there, just at a lower temperature, which is really important for white metal wagon building. This soldering iron, talking in Celsius, starts at 200 and it goes all the way up to 480 degrees Celsius or 896 Fahrenheit. For white metal kit building, white metal will melt at 90 degrees. So you need to turn your soldering iron all the way down to pretty much as low as it will go. I've got it on about 220 degrees. Now that might sound a bit strange that the white metal melts at 90 degrees, but we're having our soldering iron at 200. So why doesn't this just melt away when we try to solder it? And the answer to that is it does. It does just melt away when you try and solder it. But the idea is you're so quick in and out and efficient, you don't give the white metal chance to come up to temperature to absorb enough heat to then melt and change composition. So with that out of the way, so like I say, Atten 937 soldering iron. It's really important that you get the best quality soldering iron that you can afford. A lot of companies as well will sell the same soldering iron but at different prices. So make sure you have a look that you're not getting fleeced off. I know my friend David sent me a soldering iron the other day saying, "Is this a good one to buy?" But it was exactly the same as a different one, just rebranded, and the other one was a lot cheaper. So just do a bit of shopping, make sure you're getting good value for money with soldering irons. But it's also always best to get a good one, not necessarily an expensive one, just a good one. You also need a damp sponge for cleaning the nib, and that is the shape nib that is required for white metal soldering. Not sure what you call it, chiseled, angled, not sure what that really is, but this is the one that they all seem to come with, pointed nib, and you don't want that for white metal or brass soldering because that is a very fine point and you want to cover a large surface area when you're soldering. As much area as possible in one hit to get the most efficiency out of the heat. You also need, obviously, a flux. This makes the solder flow properly. I believe this is from Elaine's Emporium by Slaters. This is specifically for white metal solder. And talking of white metal solder, you also need white metal solder. You cannot use standard solder for white metal kits. You can, but you're making life 20 times more difficult. You really need to invest in some white metal solder. It's really not expensive. It might be annoying having two different types of solder constantly around, one for your layout wiring, one for white metal building, but trust me, it's so much easier with white metal solder. So we'll get a piece out. There we go. And put that aside for now. So if anyone's got any questions about what I'm doing, please do feel free to ask. Ask what I'm doing, ask questions. If you want me to go back over something, just say, and I'll do it. This isn't your normal 1 hour live stream. We're going to be taking more time, having a bit more of a chat and a chinwag. So feel free to come and go as you want. I'll be sticking on for a couple of hours maybe. So yeah, any questions, put them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. Steve has asked, where's my black card for making it easier to focus on the camera? I was hoping to get some in the new year. I haven't had a chance to get any yet, and there wasn't any down at the HQ. But when I did the live stream down at HQ, they had a different type of camera, overhead camera. I'm using an iPhone, which seems to be quite bad at picking up on what to focus on. But they've got, Justin's got a proper camera on his overhead, and that makes it much easier to focus. So I'll probably look at investing in one of those and a proper lapel mic in a new year to improve the quality of the videos. So before I read some more questions, I'll just tell you what I'm going to do so I can do some work and answer questions. Once you've got the parts out of the kit, this is for your standard White Metal Wagon kit, which comes with the W irons pre-fitted. Some kits, like this one, come with W irons you've got to make up. These are notoriously harder, so I would avoid, if this is your first one, you've not done many, avoid kits where you have to make W irons like that. You'll get onto them one day, but just for now, it's better to get kits where the W irons, which is where the wheels and the axle bearings go, come as standard. So there's just a little bit of flash around the edges, as you can see there. So with just a flat jeweler's file, I'm just going to go around the whole model, all 4 parts, and just tie things up. You can also see here around the W irons, this one's clean and open. This one is still filled in. So I'm just going to take a couple of tools inside there just to open it out a bit. So I'll get cracking with this and I'll have a look at some comments. Right. Morning, Rachel. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for posting updates on, is it Hop's Choice, your layout? Really do like that. It's looking like a really good project. I think a lot of people would agree there. It's been really fun to see how that's progressing. Andrew says vacuum pipes are better to be super glued. If a solder iron is too hot, it runs the chance of melting the part before it has fixed. Yes, that's very true. I will come on to that later. I have some super glue somewhere, which I like to use, but I have misplaced it. I put my flux on it, my solder on it. That's the stuff I like to use. Do your look it hot, but we'll get onto that later. You can use solder detailing parts on if you're quick and your iron's hot enough. For those that might have missed it this morning or want me to repeat what I said, even though sort of white metal melts at 90 degrees, it's better to use a higher temperature. It's much better. You can't solder at a low temperature. You would just take too much time, and the white metal kit will absorb too much heat and then melt or warp. So it's much better to use a very hot iron or a relatively very hot iron and be quick, rather than use a cool iron, and take your time. So hot and quick is better than cooler and more care. James says, I have finished the OPI paper model building that I told you about. That's brilliant. Thank you. Feel free to share your work in the Real Modelers Club. I'm sure there's a couple of us who would like to see that. Morning, Tom McKee. Hope you're well. Hope you're having a good Christmas so far. So just cleaning up with a standard flat jeweler's file, a couple of corners, just to give it a better fit. We can, once we've done all of them, we can sort of go back and have a look, see if we're happy with it. And I think there seems to be a bit of detailing on the top, but I actually think they're just pips from the injector mold. So I'm just going to carefully take them down. David says, Dylan, can you tell me how you clean hard white metal filings from your needle files? I can't. I haven't got to that stage where I've had to clean them. To be fair, I've just got a new file. I know there is a way you can do it, but I've completely forgotten. I've completely forgotten what it is. I think you soak it in something. Soak it in vinegar or something like that, and then they come out. Or to be fair, you can buy a pack of good files for a couple of quid. So it might not be very economical or friendly, environmentally friendly, but you could probably just get away with just replacing the files. Andrew says you can glue these kits together and get the same good results. I would agree with you that you can glue them together, but I would disagree on the same results. You can probably get good results by gluing, if not nearly identical, but you are teaching yourself better skills if you solder it together. You can't glue a loco kit together. Some people do, and they can, but it doesn't give you the same results, and it doesn't look, I suppose, under scrutiny, it doesn't look as clean. You can do it. There's no reason why you shouldn't be gluing kits together, especially wagons. You can definitely glue these together, but I prefer to solder anyway. But I always think it's best to start as you mean to go on. So I prefer to solder together, so I get my skills up. So when it comes to doing like the DJH Britannia kit I'm working on at the moment, I have those skills to take that forward. I know when you glue loco kits together, they run the risk of breaking apart, especially over time. So it's probably just best to solder them. One thing I will say is when you are filing and using glass fiber brushes, which we'll get onto in a second, you run the risk of getting metal splinters in your hands and feet, which are very painful. They are not fun at all. I absolutely hate metal splinters. I got a couple in my feet last time I did a wagon, which really, really hurt, so just be careful. There's not much you can really do about it, but just try and take as much care as you can. David said you can clean a file with a wire brush. That's it. I knew there was a very simple way of doing it and going about it. A wire brush. I can't remember who was asking. I think it was David Swallow. You can use a wire brush or something similar. Probably wire wool, something like that would work quite well. I'm glad this kit comes with W-irons prefixed. You do get some which they come with white metal W-irons that you've got to solder on yourself. One I built for Tony Wright as a present a couple of weeks ago had that. It had white metal W-irons that you have to solder on yourself. They weren't as bad as the brass ones. Brass ones are a pain. But it's just better that they come pre-on because you know they're in the right place. You know they're going to work. When you solder them on, you run the risk of them being at different angles, wrong position, and which ultimately leads to bad running. Nearly getting there now with this last piece, but we've got a little bit more tidying up to do. The buffers, the coupling on this just need opening out because they are filled in on this. Hopefully you can see that. These need to be open and they're filled in, so just need to open them out. I'll show you how I do that, but before I do that, I'm just going to sort of do a bit of a dry run and see how that to me looks to be bloody perfect. That is quite a way. That's quite a way off perfect. It was off perfect side upside down. That's why it wouldn't fit. But to be fair, I don't know. Trying to assess to see if that's correct. That's going to go. Let's take a little bit more off this piece, just off the corner, just file it down a little bit more, just so you can get a slightly better fit. you can kind of tell if the white metal that you're filing is meant to come off, because it's a lot thinner than the main part, because it's only flash. It's residue, but not residue, it's like a byproduct of the manufacturing process, so you can tell when it easily files off, that it's meant to come off. Right, let's have another look. Yeah, that seems to fit a lot nicer to me. I'm happy at that. Let's get rid of that for a second. Right, so soldering iron is on and at temperature, which is great, but we aren't ready for that. It helps to have some cutting broaches in various sizes. These are good. These are just like almost like tapered square thingy-mabobs, as you can see, and they just help open up where we've got quite a bit of flash. Get them in various sizes. We need to get some better sizes, because I've only got very, very small ones. Morning, Chris. Thank you for joining us. Chris is joining us from Norfolk. Hope it's a bit nicer down there than it is up in Doncaster. It's a bit, well, it was very cold this morning. Went to the gym at about 6:30, and it was a good -1, which is quite a bit nippy, shall we say. A bit fresh. So I'm just trying to open these holes a bit. It doesn't matter if that's not perfect, because they'll be painted black and you won't really see it. But probably best just to open up slightly. Yep, that's all looking good to me. So I'm just going to clear my desk a little bit. In fact, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to have a look at soldering some detail parts on. In fact, no, I'm not. I did that last time, and it didn't work out very well, because that meant what I'm on about is basically detailing parts like this, the brake shoes, brake rods, whatever you want to call them. They solder on to the back of the sides like this, like that, which is all well and good, but the extra detailing bits in the middle sometimes make it a little bit more difficult to solder the parts together. So it might be easier to do this when the four sides have been joined up. Oh, that's cool. I've not noticed that before on a white metal kit. Normally they just sort of slot on top, these detailing brake shoes, brake parts. Normally they just sort of slot on top and you solder them on. But these actually have like a clamp almost. You can see that. Almost clamp on, which is different. Never seen that in a white metal kit, which is good. It shows their some of them are all different, some are improving and get better. Now, I will warn you, this is normally the burn yourself and try not to swear moment. I will do my best not to do that. I'm just going to break my solder up a bit. When it's in this big tube, it's sort of a bit hard to use. So I'm going to, hope you can see this with the chiseled nib, I'm just sort of going to press down and make some pellets. These pellets are easy to drop into place. And once they're dropped into place, you just add a little bit of heat and they all flow together. It's just easy. Rather than having the solder on the tip of your iron, it's easier to make pellets like these. If I can find one that's dried. Yeah, easy to make pellets like this. And you simply put the two parts together, drop the pellet in place, add plenty of flux, and just tap in with the iron, and it gives you a nice tack joint. It's not a permanent joint. And a tack joint is simply just makes it a little bit. It just gives it like a bit of bite where you can then assess, see if it's correct, and then properly go in to solder it. So I'm just going to take a little bit of extra. I don't think that part is still wanting to necessarily go. Oh no, it is. It is. It's just not. Yeah. So that will go. Just a case of finding what one wants to do. And that's a lot easier. So I'm going to have a look at doing this one first. Now this is probably a bit difficult to get you to see what I am doing. But I will hopefully try and both find an angle that works for me and an angle which means I can show you what I'm doing. This is where you need 20 hands with 20 fingers on each hand. Try and get it so you can hold it and see it and solder it. I've still not figured out which is the best position for this. Might actually be. No, I can't do it upside down. Also helps to have asbestos fingers because I think I'm going to have to hold it and solder it, which isn't going to be the best. Excuse me if I'm ignoring the chat for a second, but this is the difficult, awkward bit. So ciphers go quiet. Like I say, this is really fiddly, just getting it. Right, I think that's probably as close as I'm going to get. The only thing I'm worried about is I have my finger on the other side of the joint, so if the solder seeps through the, what can I call it? Someone's saying, have you got the 90-degree SMS jig? I have. I tried it last time. I'll just give it a little try, but I don't think it really added much because one part has got the W lines on, so it sits a lot higher than the other. Give it a whirl. See if that actually helps. It might do actually. Once you get the tack joint in, it's held, and then you can play around with it a bit because it's got a tack joint in and it's held into position. And then once you've got all four together, it's even better then because it's got that little bit extra. So apologies if this is a bit frustrating to watch, but trust you and me, it's a bit more frustrating to do. Okay, I'm going to go with that. No, I'm not. This is slipped off. Very, very difficult to make sure that everything's aligned because you can't see it. When it's in the jig, you can't see it because it's upside down because of the W lines. So I think I'm going to go back to, in fact, what I might do, might make it easier, is I had a roll of black tack somewhere. If I can find that quickly. There it is. Black tack. I've just seen Jed has just probably commented the same thing. Use a bit of black tack to hold the short end. Trying to work out well how I want to do this. So that's going to go like that. That's going to go in there. And I can probably get in like that. Super. That works really well. So it turns out a piece of black tack appears to work wonders. So now we've solved that riddle. get an old paintbrush, liberally paint both sides of what you want to solder, get a nib of your flux of your solder of choice, make sure that's in position, push the nib in place, that nib's too big, take a smaller one, and then once you're moderately happy with the position of everything, which is easier said than done, take your iron, and the nib has just sort of come out, so I'm going to poke that back in the corner, and it's come off the black tack. This is really a test and measure thing, you can't really rush this, which is why I said we're going to be here. Right, I think, hopefully, that's probably quite a large tack joint, and indeed it is. As you can see, that's not a very good angle, but hopefully you can see. I've used way too much solder. I would have liked to cut that little nib in half. Used way too much solder, but I can probably very, very, very gently just sort of tweeze that and inch it. There we go. 90 degrees, sorted. A little bit funny, but that's good enough for me. So now that's that one sorted, we can move on to the other one. And that's only, it's a big tack joint, but it's a tack joint. Once we've got this half together, tacked, then we can solder it to the other half. We can then go over it with lots of solder, lots of flux, and make it properly join up, which is exactly what we want. So that's just, so the tack joint just holds it in place temporarily while we get all four parts together, and then we can sort of go to town. Just double checking that will marry up nicely. It doesn't matter, I don't know if you can see that, it doesn't matter if there's a gap or the joint doesn't look perfect, because the solder will naturally flow into that and naturally clean it up for us. And you also, good habit, talking about good habits earlier, cast fibre brush, just clean up the corners, just make it easier for solder to run into, give you a clean finish, but that's not overly important on a small thing like this. Just having a look at the comments while we have a little break. Steve's asked, is the metal magnetic? I'm not too sure. I don't have a magnet around me to try. But I presume so, maybe, but I don't think it'd be very magnetic. Yep, Jed said Bob blue tack will help. Yeah, the bit of black tack under that end piece really does help. Let's have a look at more comments. See if we've got any more. Gillian says, hello Dylan, first time we've been able to join a live show. Always so impressed that you can model and talk and deal with technical issues too. I'm not sure I can deal with technical issues. I don't know if you saw earlier, I was having a couple of issues back then. But I think we're running okay now. But thanks for joining us this cold Wednesday morning. Hope you're well. So I'm just going to use an even smaller nib, even smaller nugget of solder. Just sort of hold it in, make sure this will go correctly. Yep, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with how that's looking. Push the little nib of solder in. Chiseled tip. And have a look. That looks a lot less solder this time, and it's nowhere near as flowed in. But when you, like I said before, but it's a progress like a broken record. When you tackle 4 parts together and solder it all up, you should make that. You can then use the extra strength that's given you to make it much more correct the joints, shall we say. Also, make sure you do the correct halves. Don't make 2 left halves. Make a left and a right. we've all done it, and if we say we haven't, we're lying. We've all made 2 left parts by mistake in the past. It's something every modeler has done, and it's something all future modelers will do. So I'm just going to have a little play with these 2 parts now. 2 halves, because one of them's slightly out, so it's not quite wanting to go, and that part's just broken off. That's absolutely fine. Parts will break off, because like I say, we're only using tack joints. If a part does break off, just see if it will sort of fold back together, and if it seems a little bit just sort of tight, then all you need to do is just get your flat file and just sort of take it away a bit. Solder is quite soft, so it will just sort of break off with a file. Create a clean joint and do it again. This will happen. They will break away if you're. I believe that part that broke away was the one that wasn't quite 90 degrees. So I just gave it a little play. I just moved it around a bit. So that probably weakened the joint quite a bit. So that's probably why that just broke away a little bit. Gary is saying it's sort of more permanent than super glue. For things like a wagon, no, it probably isn't. It's probably less likely to corrode, weaken over time. But for a wagon, that's not particularly important. For kits of locomotives and coaches, I would say it's more important to use solder, just so you get the better finish. That's all. That's not saying solder's better than glue. It's just that for the nature of the job, it's probably a bit more suitable, should we say. So since this is the second time I've soldered this piece, I'm just going to clean it up with a glass fiber brush to get clean off excess flux residue, which might hinder the solder. And I'm going to use an even smaller nib of solder because we already have some on the kit. Paintbrush with the solder, flux even. Paint that over. Push that to the top, so I want the tack joint at the top rather than the bottom. Usually thing just to line it up at the top to make sure it's somewhat level. And there we go, that's a much, much better joint than last time. But, oh, that's ironic, it's a much better joint, but as you can see, it's in completely the wrong place. So all we have to do now is break that off and have another go. This is all part of the story, really. It's quite hard to solder or tack the 2 halves together. It just sometimes just doesn't want to play ball, which is fine. We are, I suppose, soldering metal together, so it's probably quite difficult to get it to play nicely. Andrew says make sure that when the kit is fully soldered to scrub it with the wife's toothbrush and with soapy water, particularly so otherwise over the paint will peel. Yep, that is very true. Same with plastic kits. When you put together a plastic kit, make sure you glue it. Not make sure, but obviously make sure you glue it. But make sure you clean it after you've glued it, because, like Andrew says, the residue left over from the manufacturing process, the solder, the glue, will sometimes affect the paint job. So you just want to make sure that that isn't there. Just clean it all up. Sorry if I seem distracted. I'm just trying to make sure that these parts look to be you got just soldered a file of solder away. That was accidentally put in the wrong place. Just give it a clean joint. But yeah, I definitely agree with what Andrew's saying there. Clean your models after you've built them. That just helps you give a better finish to the paintwork. Definitely is a bit of a top tip there, Andrew. Thanks for sharing. One half seems to be standing up okay. But like I say, it's just the sort of nature of the job. This, you know, you can't. It's test and measure. It's always test and measure. One thing might work, the next might not. You just need to take your time. No rush. It's only a model. There we go. That seems to want to line up better. So, what's this now? Take 3. I think it's take 3. I'm going to take obviously more care this time to make sure that the parts are lined up better. If I can. Sorry, this has gone quiet. Like I say, just making sure that it's all correct. Just one tiny bit of solder to get it going. And then me a tiny bit. I don't want to use too much and then take it all off again like last time. Right, I think I am about happy with that. Push that down with that. I felt that move at the last second, so that might be. Oh no, that's perfect, absolutely perfect. Obviously ignore the black tack, we're going to peel that off in a second. But that is now absolutely tacked on. That is not solid at all. So we need to handle this with care now. Which is probably not the easiest when you've got a load of black tack imprinted onto the kit. So I'm very, 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 very carefully peel this off. There we go. Did not want that to break for a second time. So, 2 halves make a hole, and here are the 2 halves. And that is a much. Oh, I'm happy with that. That's perfect. That's perfect. Absolutely, that's a perfect fit. I'm happy with that. Right, so now what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of extra time just to make sure that I am perfect. Well, I'm not perfect, that the kit's perfect, and that's not just a sort of a spur of the moment comment. Just make sure that it seems to line up properly. That side does, if that side does. Yep. So now I'm sort of pinching this together. It's so much easier once you've got 2 halves together. That's it. You've done it. The kit's together now. That's it. The hard bit's done. Watch me make an absolute mess of this now. Now I've said that, all you need to do is just get it in an angle. You can solder it and show the camera. But once it's, like I say, it sort of holds itself together, so just sort of like that. Making sure it's all pinched together nicely. Come on, where you want to go. Probably easy to do this on the ground, on the mat. There we go. Bit of flux in the corner. Bit of solder. Drop that in. Happy with the joint position? Yep, I'm happy with that. Iron. I'm going to try and bring this as close to the camera as I can to show you. Don't breathe the fumes in. The fumes are toxic. Excuse me. There we go. We now have one side properly soldered, two sides tacked, one side loose. This is when it's in its most sort of fragile state, because that loose side could sort of come away and sort of ruin the whole thing and pull it apart. So just make sure that's pinched together nicely. Once we've done this, I might actually take a break and have a look at some models if you want. If you want to see some models next, let me know. Or if you want me to carry on, also let me know. I've got a couple of models lined up just off shot. Solder nibs just falling out. Show you again. At this time, I'll hold my breath and get slightly further away. Okay. Good job being a bass trombonist and tuba player. I can hold my breath quite a bit. But that's it done. There we go. Well, that's not the kit done. That is the four sides of a white metal kit. All we need to do now is find the weakest joints, potentially that one. But before we go any further, put it in a jig like that. Just have a look that it's true and square. That looks right to me. That looks right. That's right. Yeah, I am more than happy with that at the moment. That is going really, really well. Andrew's saying, can you also low melt solder brass kits? Now, this is a bit of a complicated answer, so I'm going to hopefully do my best to explain this. Brass kits have a much higher soldering temperature. That's because brass absorbs a lot more heat than white metal. It's got a lot higher melting point, so you need to use a lot more heat to solder brass together. Let me bear with us 1 second. You might lose microphone quality while I go get this. And here is one I made earlier. Hopefully, if I use a little prop, it will allow me to explain a bit better. This is a chassis for a DJH Britannia kit. It's quite a nice little kit, but as you can see, the chassis is brass, mainly. Yeah, the chassis is entirely brass, but the body is white metal. So when you solder brass, the temperature required is a lot higher, so you need to use a lot more heat to get the solder flowing onto the brass and to get a good joint. Now that's very all well and good. All you do is whack up the soldering iron off to save some electricity. Whack up soldering iron to a much higher heat, and away you go as normal. But you, rather than go in and out like we were with the white metal, you hold it for a lot longer. So you get the heat flow and so you get it working properly. With white metal, obviously, you've just seen me do it. You need to much lower heat and very quick in and out to avoid the white metal from melting. But if you then solder white metal which is on the same part as brass, you need to use different temperatures, because if you use the same temperature to solder brass, if I can get this the right way around, but there's white metal on the part, then you will melt the white metal. So you need to use different temperatures, different solders, so the two parts don't melt each other, if that makes sense. So high temperature solder for brass parts, low temperature for white metal. You can use you can use white metal solder on brass, brass temperatures, but you can't the other way around. It's just easier and simpler to keep them different, brass solder for brass at high temperature, white metal for white metal, and try not to let the two parts sort of interact with each other and melt each other. So hopefully that was somewhat English and a little bit clear. So that's the majority. In fact, hopefully you can see this. Ooh, you can. Hello everyone. You can see me again. Right. Yeah, so let's have a look at some models if you want. This is why I wanted the second camera up, so I could make it easy to show everyone. But if it's not wanting to work, Simon Cock has just joined us. Good morning, Simon. I hope you're well. So is Roy Weston from New South Wales. Good morning, everyone. Having a great week. If you want to catch up on what we've been doing, once this live stream is finished, you can actually go back on YouTube and watch it all there. You can watch all our previous ones on YouTube as well. Just gonna angle this camera a bit differently. I think probably a bit skewy, but that should work a bit better. Right, let's have a look at some models. So I've lined up a couple of my, I suppose you can say, favourites to have a look at. Starting with a very dusty Bachmann. There we go, there's the camera. J72. This is an absolutely gorgeous model. Sound fitted, new release, new tooling. I think the Bachmann J72 before this hadn't been touched for about 20 years, I think. I think it had chassis upgrades to DCC, but apart from that, it was a 20-year-old model. This is brand new from the wheels up, and it's absolutely perfect. It's got firebox flicker, DCC sound fitted, and is an absolutely sterling Northeastern model. I suppose if you wanted to make a joke, you'd say it's not sterling, it's Worsdale, because sterling's obviously a designer for the Great Northern Railway, I think. But no, absolutely lovely model. Superb, brilliant detail, weathered superbly by my friend Tom Foster. Only gripe I have with this model, as you'll see when we move on with the next couple, is if I can get a pointy thing. That's a pointy thing. The loco lamp on the front, it comes with loco lamps, which is quite, I think it's one of the first models to actually come with them, which is very nice, very kind of Bachmann. Thank you, Bachmann, for providing them. But they're very, very overscale, and lamps don't look like that on LNER locomotives. They do not at all. I've got proper lamps on the next locos that you'll see, but no, very, very, very nice model. It's got some good pulling power. It's got enough pulling power, should I say. Relatively weighty for the size. Actually, I think these models are really cheap. I think you can pick these up DCC ready for less than £100, about 90 odd quid, which is great for the quality of the model you get. Absolutely perfect. Just get it weathered like I have in a nice used but looked after look, and you're laughing. What more could you want? I'm really looking forward to getting my layout running so I can have this model just trundling around. That's going to look perfect, I think. Right, now onto the Pacifics, which I have no idea how I'm going to do. But the next one, I'm going to deconnect the tender because I don't need to see that. I'll show you the tender separately, but that's not important. The next one, if I just give it a quick clean before I show it on camera, is my favourite model. You might have seen photos of this posted on the Rare Modelers Club because I clicked the favourite model, so that's all I'm going to post. But it is absolute beauty. I'm holding it the wrong way. Let me turn it around and then I'll be able to show you a bit better. If I can hold it without breaking anything off. It's a Hornby Gracely A4 named Kingfisher in an absolutely gorgeous weathering oily rag look. This is, like I say, this is my top link locomotive, absolutely superb. It's a Hornby A4. They're brilliant. There's not much you can say about it. The only gripe I have with it is the decoder is in the tender. Sorry, the decoder isn't in the tender. It's in the body of the locomotive, which is all right, but it makes sound fitting almost impossible. Or at least a good sound decoder, almost impossible. The new upgraded models that have the sound fitting provisions in the tender sound a lot better because you can fit a much greater speaker in, which is perfect. But the older, slightly older ones have them in the body, which is slightly worse. Morning, Stuart. Morning, Sam. Hope we're all well. For those that are just joining us, we have just built this, which is a White Metal Wagon, just showing off some soldering hints and tips I picked up over the couple of months I've been doing this, and hopefully passing them on. And now this is just the tender that goes with it. Real coal, oily rag look. Not much to say about that really, but I'll just pick this up again and show you again. Hopefully you can see the lamps on this model are by Model U. Alan over at Model U, painted by Dan Everson, just in white when I go and do some figures for me. They're much nicer than the background ones. They're much finer. They don't work, but the real ones hardly ever worked anyway, so I'm happy with that compromise. Just bear with us while I just blow my nose. I am a bit ill at the moment. I'll just mute you while I do it as well. Sorry about that. I don't have COVID, don't worry. I'm not part of that club. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But I am a little bit badly. So now we're moving on to the freight loco, which I suppose that's my favourite. One of my favourite passenger locos. It's probably my favourite northeastern freighters. Morning, Stuart's just said that I'm keeping him company in the car. Very, very well done, Stuart, for passing his driving test recently. I too passed mine recently, and I know how much freedom it gives you. It's amazing. Got no excuse not to see you at all the model shows now, Stuart. I'll see you at Doncaster if it's still on, which I really hope it is because I love Doncaster show. It's a brilliant, superb little thing. Right, another Hornby model, as you can probably guess. But all of them are from now on, although all Hornby. But it is a Raven Q6, superbly weathered again by my good friend Tom Foster. But it just needs real coal fitting, crew in the cab. But apart from that, and a decoder fitting. But we can't ask for more than that. It looks really good. Couple this up to a couple of HUOs, Cure Scale HUOs, and 16-ton mineral wagons, and you're laughing. I took this over straight as soon as I got this. I took it straight over for a run on to buy them with Tony Wright, and he loved them. He loved it. Superb little model. Superb weathering by Tom Foster again. So a huge thank you and a Merry Christmas to him if he's watching. I highly recommend everyone go check Tom's work out over on RM Web. Absolutely brilliant. His modelling, absolutely superb. Okay, so penultimate model. Not going to do too many because I want to get back onto the kit so we have a chance of getting it done before it goes dark today, if it ever gets light, to be fair. Morning, Martin Jackson. Hope you are well today. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record to those who've been watching since the start, but if you want to catch up, you can do on YouTube. This will be uploaded in full as soon as we finished. So the next model I'm going to show is, if anyone has sort of been keeping up to date with what I've been posting, is a 2020 Hornby release, and is actually one of the most accurate models ever produced. It's not a exciting model necessarily. It hasn't got lights, hasn't got DC sound, it hasn't got a lot of the features that people like the Cure Scale and the Delta are bringing out. But it is a kettle, so that's why it hasn't got any lights. But it is one of the most accurate. As in, if you took the real version, shrunk it down 76.2 times, and installed an electric motor, you get this. It was meticulously developed by, again, sound like a broken record, Tony Wright, but he made sure that the Hornby team got it correct. Absolutely bang on correct. So this is probably the most accurate model ever produced in ready to run form. Apart from, I will have to say, the livery. The livery is a bit pants. The colour of the Brunswick green isn't that amazing. But if you can't tell, it's a Thompson A2-3, which was developed in the 1940s, mid-1940s, as a progressor of the A2-2, which was the rebuild of the Gresley P2. So it has quite a bit of history, where it's come from. But as you can see, superbly weathered model, again, by Tom Foster. Just needs crew fitting in the cab. It's already got the lamps on. This runs amazingly as well. I've had this locomotive pulling a full rake, so 11 kit-built brass Mark 1 coaches, which are really heavy, and this can pull them with ease, which is really, really good going. We can't ask for much more than that. I have two of these. I've got two of these and two of the A22s. The other A2-3, which is renamed to High Scylla, this one is Suncastle, has been weathered to an even more sorry and dirty state. That's got loads of lime scale running down the boiler. It looks absolutely filthy, but it's brilliant for sticking on your parcels and your freight trains. Really great addition to my layout. I absolutely love it. Again, weathered by Tom Foster. Absolutely superb work. So, the last one. I wonder if anyone can guess what it is. We've done the A4s, we've done the A2s, we've done a couple of freight locomotives. I wonder what's next. And then we'll get cracking back on with the whatchamacallit, White Metal kit. So I hope everyone's enjoying this so far. Should be around a bit longer, probably another hour or two. So feel free to go get a break and sandwich, come back, join us later. I'll still be here. If anyone's got any questions at all about any modelling in general really, feel free to put your question in the comments and I'll do my very best to help. Steve thinks it's Thomas the Tank Engine. It's not Thomas the Tank Engine. It's not blue. It's not green. It's not red. Hopefully that might give you a little bit of a clue. I'll just give it a bit of a clean before And it is a kettle. It is steam powered, but not conventionally steam powered. But hopefully, I think quite a lot of you probably know what it is now. Let's see if I can pick it up without breaking it, because I don't want to break this, because then I'll really be out of pocket. Steve thinks it's rocket. No, it's not yellow. It is, of course, a W1 Hush Hush, named British Enterprise. And now I do wish I got the non-named version, the as built version. And if I see one for sale, I'll probably have to snap it up at a reasonable price. But this is absolutely gorgeous. It's a 4622, which I've forgotten the name of the wheel arrangement. I think the Baltic is 464, but this is actually a 4622 because the pony truck where my pinky finger is fixed, but in the real one, the rearmost was pivot. So it's technically a 4622. Sam says, wow, one with intact smoke deflectors. Yep, I was very lucky. I got Tony from Tony's Trains of Rugby to give it a good check over for me before he sent it out. What I will say though is there's a tiny bit of, you can see the steps there, just behind the piston cylinder. Yeah, that's slightly skewy. Oh, I just need a little bit of plastic cement just to secure that in place. But I had this running on Ian's layout, AY76. Highly recommend you go check that out on YouTube. I think it's one of the oldest model railways on YouTube that's still going. AY76, brilliant channel. I had this running on his layout when I first got it, and she runs like a dream. Absolute dream. She's a gorgeous, gorgeous model. Surprisingly, she came with lamps fitted as well. I think they're actually permanent, so you can't take them off, which is a bit different, I suppose. I don't know why they've made them permanent, so you can't take them off, because obviously the lamps change depending on what type of train it's running. If it's running light engine, it won't have two lamps at the front, it'll have one, which is, I don't know why Hornby's done it like that, but I'm just happy they've done it at all, because W1 Hush Hush is such a rare, unique locomotive. Only one was built in 1929-1930, and it was withdrawn from service in 1934, as it is now, as it is here, after only completing a relatively handful of miles. And then it was rebuilt with a extended, elongated A4 style Bugatti covered boiler. It still kept the same chassis, kept the same tender, kept the same cab, but the boiler was changed from the high pressure boiler, which is what this is, to the standard conventional steaming boiler, and then was renumbered 6700 under British Rail, and had a happy career with British Rail. Shed 36A in Doncaster. And actually a good, interesting little story. Tony Redmond on the group, the Rail Modelers group, was actually talking to me about it, and I sort of, he got me going a bit. I ended up reeling off all this information that I know about Hush Hush. She was shedded at Doncaster shed all her life, from being rebuilt, and after the war, when British Rail decided that all express top link locomotives would be painted in Brunswick, Doncaster shed didn't actually have any allocated Pacifics at the time, but we did have Hush Hush. So they painted Hush Hush into Brunswick, 6700, and that actually apparently caused quite a bit of a stir in British Rail, because they didn't like Hush Hush because it was one off, it wasn't standard, which obviously goes against the thought line of the British Rail at the time. So apparently they didn't like Hush Hush being painted into their favourite Brunswick livery, which was quite an interesting story. But apparently the Doncaster crews absolutely adored this locomotive, or the rebuild of this locomotive, and I've heard stories from the crews that if they had pre-war engine management and maintenance and could afford to spend all the time and money in keeping her in top link condition, because don't forget, and the track the permanent way as well, because don't forget, during the war, the amount of money, I suppose money spent on a locomotive and track per mile travelled was a lot higher than it was during the Second World War. The spending probably went up for the railway in the Second World War, but also the usage went through the roof. So the condition of locomotives and the track went through the floor. It bottomed out, and locomotives would just run into the ground without proper maintenance to get them to haul the trains they needed to haul. So there's some stories from LNER, ex-LNER Doncaster crews, that if 6700 had received the proper maintenance that she had required, there's stories that she could have got up to about 150 miles per hour, beating Mallard's speed record, which I think is amazing. And I would have loved that. As much as I like Mallard, being a Doncaster lad from Doncaster, a Doncaster fan, it would have been nice that 6700 would have actually broken the speed record, because that probably would have meant she would have been preserved as well, which is a shame. And it would have meant that 150 just sounds a bit nicer than 126.3 to me. It would have been amazing for 6700 Pegasus, as she was also meant to be called, but never received the name. But there she is. I'll be posting a lot more photos and videos of her in the Rail Modelers Club in future. Absolutely gorgeous model. And as you can probably tell, I am very, very excited to receive the model of 6700 Hush Hush in 1950s condition. She was, I think, prettier than the A4s, better than the A4s, looked better, performed better, steamed better, more comfortable for the crews. It's just a shame that she almost came about as an accident, because she came about from the rebuild of number 10,000, the high pressure. If the A4s had sort of been built to that pattern of the rebuilt pattern, I think they would have been much better locomotives. But that's by the by. Nothing we can do about that now. It's 80 years on since that happened, nearly getting towards 100 years for some cases. But it's just a little thing that I like to think about, is what would have been if there had been better track maintenance, loco maintenance, and number 6700, the unnamed Streak, or Pegasus, as she was nearly named, would have been allowed to sort of stretch her legs and reach the 150 miles per hour. Anywho, enough of my LNER biblical waffle. I think we should get on with some more kit building. So, unluckily for you, I'll get rid of my unsightly face, and I'll readjust my camera, so we're back onto the work desk cam. Is this the right way up? No, it isn't the right way up. If you just bear with 1 second, I just need to rotate my camera. It might look a bit weird to you, but there's method. Is this the right way up? Yes, there we go. When I rotated the camera to an upward position to look at my face, the iPhone decided it wanted to rotate the camera around again, but didn't want to rotate it back, so I just need to, there we go. Steve says, would that go around number 2, Rad? I think you mean second radius curves. Yes, it will, but the loading gauge is quite high. It swings out quite a lot. So while it will go around second radius, if you've got any platforms or the running lines are quite close, it might clip them. So just on the if you get one, on the very first run you give it, take it at speed step 1 all the way around for the first time, just to make sure that it doesn't hit anything on its way around. Right. Should we do some modelling? I think we should. Soldering iron's back on, which is all very well. I'm just having a look at what parts we've got. So we've got these brake irons, brake parts, not sure what you want to call these. These clip onto the inside, if you can see. They just clip in like that, and you solder them in place. There is a little lug on the underside of the V hanger, which is this part here. Can you see? Can you see? Yep, you can see there. There's a little lug on the underside of that, and there's a hole on the middle of that. That lug goes into that hole. So make sure you got it in position and sort of just gently bend that. Or let me just double check that goes into. Okie doke. Right, I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. Okay, so in the pack, there's also some extra V hangers that look like this. They're a lot smaller. They fit into that slot there. You just slide in there and sort of push in. But we might have to glue those in place because that looks to be much more fiddly than these. Right, so let me just make sure I'm happy with the position of that. Now, like I say, now we've actually got the four sides together, we're pretty much laughing now. Except I'm now holding it into place and I forgot to take the bottle off the flux. Right, plenty of flux around the top, like that. Grab a little nugget of solder, drop that where you want it, attempt to hold it in place in a position where the camera can see. Nice and hot soldering iron, clean the nib. And have the fumes pull the hairs off your nose. Blimey heck, that really got me. And just sort of drag the solder. I've actually soldered onto my fingernail there. Cool, that really got me. Sorry about that. Don't breathe the fumes in. It's not good for your health. Although many professional white metal loco builders do seem to be well into the 90s, so it's probably not that bad for your health. So I'm just going to use a tiny bit more solder because that didn't seem to want to cover the whole lot. Except it's got stuck. There we go. So I'm going to solder it onto the mat now. So that might make it easier for you to see what I'm doing. I've just lost that little plug. There it is. So we'll drop it in place. Take the soldering iron and just run it all the way down. Super simple, sorted. Next. I hope this is actually making sense to most of you. If you want me to go back over something, please do tell me, and I will. If you feel like I'm going too quick, or you want to ask a question to see something a bit clear about what I'm doing, just let me know, and I will, of course, oblige. Good, so that's that part in. Prepare the lug of solder. I have to make some more in a second. Loads of flux. Keep forgetting that when I move, you might not be able to see me. Get the lug of solder in nicely. There we go. That might be enough, but just to be safe, I'm just going to cut this piece of solder in half, if I can. And just add, it's still too big. It's quite hard to make them the size you want. They're either huge or tiny. Getting them to be sort of middle size is a bit difficult. And getting them to go where you want is even harder. I actually think that's probably enough soldering there. I probably don't need any more. But you know, just to measure up, get that part soldered in, sorted, like a boss, bossed it. Before we do any more on the actual wagon, I'm gonna get some wheels in, and then we've actually, I suppose, got part of a wagon. So these are from Elaine's Emporium. No idea what make they are. There might be a company called Markets, maybe. I've since lost the wrapper and where they came from. Definitely came from Elaine's Emporium, and they are 12mm split spoke wheels, which is pretty much the wheels you need for. Sorry, just stabbed myself. Don't think that's bleeding. Nope, we're good. Stabbed myself, and for those who have watched previously, I've actually got a new blade in, so it's very, very sharp. So that's just sod store that I've stabbed myself. Well, we've got a new blade. So they come with bearing cups. Hopefully you can see them. Now these just got a sort of test and measure, see how these fit in. They might need a little bit of glue. Oops, that one's actually come apart. That one's actually broken. We might be able to fix it. Hopefully that stays in, and hopefully that's good enough to keep the wheel in place. This is a bit of an awkward, tricky bit, trying to get the wheel bearings in. Steve says, hurrah, new blade at last. Yep, and what does he do? He stabs himself with it. So just trying to get these bearings in there, a little bit fiddly. Sometimes they just don't want to go. But sometimes they don't really need to go, so it's just a case of have a look. Tom McKee is off now. Thank you, Tom. Thanks for watching. Have a brilliant Christmas. Stay safe and happy modelling. And we'll see you in the new year. But hopefully that should be in nicely, and no, it's not quite in far enough. The what do we call it? The wheel to sit in. Trying to think how I would open that bearing up, since it's already part of the model now. Might try a tiny bit of heat. A little bit of heat might just what do you call it? Make it sink in. It could go horribly wrong. But if I just use my soldering iron to sort of heat up the bearing, because the bearing is brass, so it'll take more heat than the white metal. Let's see if that's worked a bit better. Apologies about this, everyone. Oh. Nope, just looks like a little bit more brute force required. Potentially. That might have done it. That looks a bit better. on a flat surface maybe, push it down. There we go, that might work. And then just sort of try and press the wheels in. You can sort of bend the W irons out a bit, sort of make them sit a bit better. As you can see there, you can sort of twist them in a bit. Carefully twist them in a bit, I'll have to say. But you just want a little bit of side movement, a little bit of side play. Like that, to hear that little. That's probably just about right. Maybe tie a little bit too tight, maybe. Case test and measure, build it up, stick it on your layout. If it doesn't go around the corners, open it up a little bit more, give it a little bit more side play. So this is next axle. I'm going to heat this up a little bit more now. I think that worked a little bit. Heat up the bearing, and when you press it in, it sort of melts into the white metal a bit. In theory, that should make it fit more. Probably not a very conventional method, but it is a method nonetheless. And there's probably people watching this back in the future, or now even, who have done a lot more kit building than me, absolutely screaming because I'm not doing it the conventional way. But if it works, it works. And sort of press it down a bit. Just notice the W lines are a little bit skew. There's a hair in it. Okay, so I think that's probably about right. And the next one. Try to drop it. Right. So I think it's probably a good time if anyone's got any questions, ping them in the chat. If you're watching it on Facebook, I probably won't see them. But if you ping them on YouTube, I will be able to read your comments better. They don't all show up on Facebook for whatever reason. I think it's to do with like the privacy settings and whatnot. Let's heat in the bearing through a bit, just to make it go in a bit better. They are brass, so you don't need to worry about them not going, them melting a bit. Hopefully. I'm just going to try turning the iron all the way down. Heating the wagon up just in that tiny bit. Just to try and push the bearing in a bit more. It doesn't seem to want to go. I think it's alright. As you can see, the bearings do stick out quite a little bit. There's probably a way to make them go in a bit better. But if the wheels fit, the wheels fit. That's all that really matters. This might mean you've got to sort of bend everything out a bit more to get them in. But once they're in, they're in. There we go. We have a a moving wagon. If you just sit tight a second while I get a piece of permanent way. There we go. A nice bit of bullhead track. Seems like a dream. And it sits, I'll shift some stuff. It appears to sit sort of straight. The camera's not straight, but the wagon is. And it's dead quiet. Super, I'm very happy with that. Rennie says he's never done a white metal kit before. Maybe it's time to burn fingers and give it a go. Yes, definitely is. If you're a Steam modeler, particularly, white metal kits are perfect because you don't. There's a lot. If you look at realistic, real photos of rakes. Have a drink. 1 second. There's quite a lot of wagons in those rakes that you can't make up. You can't model with ready-to-run stuff. You need to build. You need to have a go at building your own stuff. So it's perfect for that sort of thing if you're into your Steam rakes. So all I'm doing now is adding the brass rod from point A to point B. There's a little hole for it to sit into. So simply put it in at one end. Like that. Guesstimate where it needs to come up to, about there. I don't think I actually have my snips, do I? No, I'm not going to go hunting for them because that'll be very unprofessional and noisy. Oh well, I'll use my old track cutters. Look away now if you're a track cutter because it's about to break. You shouldn't use track cutters for cutting anything other than track, which is why there was a roll. Because I broke them doing that. So add that in one end. Needs a little bit more shaving off. There we go. Add the brass rod. What I used to do is hold it in one end. And push it in the other. Now that is in position, but I'm just going to tack that in. So tiny bit of flux on each end. Nice and cool soldering iron. Now this is where, I know I've not been using pellets, but tiny bit of solder on the tip of your iron. Like that. Holding your breath not to breathe any nasty fumes in. A bit more. There we go. So we've only got buffers, of which 4 V-irons and brakes to do. That's hardly anything of it really. So the V-irons, V-hangers, whatever you want to call them. So put them in place, line them up. Now choose whether you want to glue them in place, which might be a better option. I'm going to solder them in. And how you'll do this is like so. So flux, cold iron. When I say cold, I mean not on the hottest setting, the lowest setting. Tiny bit of solder on the tip of your iron. And hopefully if you can see this, so just there we go. Just sort of drop it in place where it needs to go. A little bit of pressure to sort of push it back if it comes loose. There we go. Let that go. More flux and do the other side. The other end of that, should we say. What do you do about the floor? I will come on to that in a second since you are very nearly done. It comes with a piece of plastic which you can add as the floor. All you need to do is trim it to size and it'll fit. I've used too much solder in that piece and you can actually see the joint. Not very well hidden like I would want it to be. So just sort of use your iron, sort of scrape it around. And hide it a bit better. That will be painted black, don't forget, so it'll be probably nearly impossible to see once it's painted black. And then the next one. So press that in place. Exactly the same again. Flux, one end. Press it down. Make sure it's in the right sort of position. It's just sitting a little bit proud, but I'm happy with that. Too much solder again, that's fine, because we can sort of manipulate it a bit. You only really need a tiny bit to actually cover the joint, just to tack it in. But if you didn't want to solder these parts, 2-part epoxy rosin? I don't mean rosin, what do I mean? Resin, that's the word. Or 2-part contact adhesive would work wonders. So you have got options if you don't want to solder these tiny parts on. There we go. So that's them. Now we've got the brakes to do. Normally you can see where the brakes go to. So actually, right, okay. That just shows that you need to read the bloody instructions. Okay, so I thought the V hangers went straight on like this, and then the brakes went over the top, which is normally what happens. But on this, it's slightly different design. The brakes actually go in between the parts we soldered on first, you can see that, and the V hanger. So I've just bent the V hanger up so I can solder on the brake, and then I'll bend the V hanger back down again. That just shows that you should always read the bloody instructions. But of course, us being modelers, we never do we? I think that goes on that way as well. Looks right to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the parts up with a glass fibre brush that is quite small and delicate. Just clean each side. Clean where we're going to go. Add flux. So I've bent the V-hanger that we just soldered out a bit. Add flux nicely to both parts. Turn the wagon on its side. There's a little hole in the brake lever which clicks in nicely. So if you build this kit, you'll see what I mean there. It does click in nicely. And now that's in place, I've bent the V-hanger back down to sort of sandwich it in situ. So now that's held in. I'm going to do now is more solder on the underside. Make sure I'm happy with the positioning. A little bit of solder. That's too much solder, but you can't tell. The V-hanger's just bent upwards a bit when I pushed it, so just bend that down if we can. There we go, so it's in place. Like that, that's about right. And then probably should just maybe tack that in place. So what I'm going to do, same with the V-hangers that we did. Tiny bit of solder, plenty of flux, tip of solder on the tip of the chisel. And sort of just find where it should go now. There we go. David Puncher is asking, what is the kit info, please? This kit is a 51L models kit from Wizard Kit, and it's a diagram 43 Northeastern Railway tube wagon, 10 tons. Costs about 12 quid, I think. And that is the website you need to purchase it, from wizardmodels.ltd. Yeah, we're nearly done, to be fair. It's taken us an hour and 40. Quite a bit of that time we spent looking at models. Other models, that is. So really, doesn't take long to build at all. I'm just doing the same again for the other brake iron. Oh, there's a little bit of flash on this part. So, flat foil. Just file that away. Keeping up appearances. There you go. That's all that all sorted. No worries, David. Any more questions? Fire them away. Just bending the V hanger out because I did it in the wrong order. Put the brakes on first, then the V hangers. Bend that back down once we're happy with the position. Sort of sandwich it in place. Solder, flux. Get the picture by now. Make sure the brake's in the right position. Hold it with your finger. There you go. And now probably just need a tiny bit of solder just to hold those together. I'm going to have a different approach and solve it from a different angle now, just to get see we get a better result on that joint. Pick up a little bit of solder, don't need much at all. Flux fumes do make you cough. They're not very pleasant, shall we say. But there we go, that is actually all we've got to do now is the buffers and the floor, and that's it. That's all we've got to do. But the buffers are sometimes the hardest part. So, because the hole for the buffers, he says if we were going straight in. Oh, that's funny. What I was going to say is the hole for the buffers is normally way too small, but this is actually, oh, look at that. They all the buffers just slot in nicely. Normally you have to spend ages tapering the hole outwards so that it fits in. But no, they go in perfectly. But not sprung. Obviously, you can put sprung buffers in, but sprung buffers on wagons and coaches is a little bit pointless. Unless you're really one for realism, I wouldn't bother really. So I'm just taking a little bit of flash off, and then we've got the floor to do. I'll have a look and see how easy the couplings are to fit. Because the couplings sometimes require quite a lot of fettling to do. So that's probably an off-camera job. It's quite not very child-friendly for the audience, shall we say. It's an absolutely awful job fitting the couplings. Just taking off a couple of bits of flash from the buffers. Right, that's all of them. So insert one at a time, probably. Try and make sure they're the right way up. You can tell that by the rivets. So I think rivets should be sort of like parallel almost. That's the correct term. Yeah, they should be flat rather than at an angle. I'll show you that once they're soldered in place. Hold it with your finger. Attack from the rear. Plenty of flux. Nugget of solder. Probably way too big, that nugget's huge. I've got a smaller one to hand. Try and make one quickly. To make nuggets, just sort of stab your iron in and do some dots like that. Blow on them to dry. No, it's not dry. I've got melted solder on my finger. Luckily, it's low melt. And then just drop that in. Sorry everyone, this isn't the plan. The little nugget doesn't want to sit where it should. That's close enough. That will do. And once that's tacked in, and sort of just run it round. There we go. Hopefully you could see what I was doing there. That's a buffer. That's one buffer sorted. All we need to do is now is just repeat, rinse and repeat for all four. If you're building like a shunting layout for Operation Shunt It or just for yourself personally, these sort of wagons will be perfect because you can't buy them ready to run. If you notice, it's quite an odd shaped wagon. It's got quite a short wheelbase, but it's quite long. So I suppose it's perfect in that regard to add a little bit of variation, add some difference. You know, it's not normal like you'd see a wagon look like this. So it could be interesting to see. I use way too much solder on that, but that really doesn't matter because it's all internal. And the buffer's a bit skew whiff, but buffers were meant to be bashed. James is back. Hi James, hope you're well. I'm nearly finished now, to be fair. Got 2 more buffers to do. And the floor to do, and that's it. Couplings is normally a case of choose your own. I want to use Pratt and Winkle couplings, but I haven't got the skills yet to properly sort of implement them. So I'm a bit apprehensive of that, so I'm sticking with 3 links. So just get a solder in place. There we go. Try and get the solder to flow all the way around if you can. A bit more heat where necessary. That's 3 out of 4. We're nearly got a fully complete wagon, as you can see. All we've got is 1 more buffer and the floor to do, which is a 5-minute job. And then that's us done. That's me very nearly done for Christmas. I will be still sticking around there. We're posting in the club quite a bit for everyone to see. So if you've got any questions or any issues, I'm still here. Do comment what they are, and I'll do my best to help you, even though we're away. I'm still around. A little bit more solid at the top of this one, just to, there we go, sorted. So that soldering iron is off. That's us done for soldering. Steve says, what kind of couplings does the kit come with? How easy would you be able to convert to, say, a KD at one end? The kit does not come with couplings, wheels, bearings, paint, or transfers. You've got to source all them yourself. I would recommend 3 links, but you'd have a job getting them to work properly with the spring-loaded 3 links on. So I normally just solder the hook into place. How would you get KDs on to fit onto one end? Oh, that's a good question because I don't know. As you can see, there's not much on the bottom to attach them with. I'm going to add the floor now, but apart from that, there's not much else. So the floor, this comes in the kit though. It's a nice sort of not laser engraved, but sort of printed plastic wood planking. All you do is trim it to size and cut and stick into place. So you need to cut 2 planks off the end. So what we do is get your metal rule, craft knife, 2 planks off the end, out there. There we go. And about a size width worth from the edge. Doesn't matter if it's, you can see daylight through, because these kind of wagons are probably covered with tarpaulin anyway. See Josh Swales' article on that in the club if you want. It's a great article on how to create awesome looking tarpaulin out of Tunnock's wafers. Not Tunnock wafer, Tunnock wafer wrappers, which if you like them is super. It means you get to eat them. So see if that fits. Perfect. Fit it does. Now, an optional step, but it's something I would always recommend. Just remove the floor. Find a pen, a permanent marker preferably. See if I can find one. There it is. So, you finished it. I just need to make it yours. Bill and Samson, what's the date? 22nd. Wednesday, 5, Xmas special. This is ours now. We've made it. Just blow that dry. Another test run. There you go. There's our signature on the bottom. Get your rocket rapid. Awful glue. Well, it's good stuff, this glue, but it gets everywhere and it really sticks. You will pull the skin off your fingers if you get it on your fingers. Minnie's got to go to work now. Thanks for joining us, Minnie. I hope you have a very good Christmas, and I'll see you in the new year. So try to use as little glue as possible. And once you've glued it, you've got to leave it. If you pick it up, some of the glue will still, see? The glue gets everywhere. Just a little splash and you'll glue your fingers together. Press that into place. There we have it. A white metal wagon built from opening the packet to sticking it on some track and sending it to the paintworks in, what's that, an hour and 55 minutes, but of course, we spent a couple of time deliberating, chatting. There you have it. Fully built, apart from couplings, apart from paint, transfers, wagon. Can't get much better than that. This is why I love our hobby. I can look at a train of wagons, coaches, locomotives, like this as well, and say, I built this, this is mine. Yeah, I didn't buy it, I didn't take it out of the box and put it on the track. I built it. What I built is my work. Nothing wrong with buying wagons. I own hundreds of bought wagons. But to be able to point to one and go, I built that, I soldered that together, that's my work, is pretty fantastic, if you ask me. So if you want any close-ups, I'll take some photos and post it on the Rail Modelers Club. That is absolutely sterling. So if I just twist this the right way, excuse me a second. Yeah, that way. Hopefully, there we go. I can pick that up and show you. This was built with solder, glue, sweat, tears, a bit of blood, and practice. So have a go. All I can say is you will surprise yourself with how easy it is. Do a couple, you're laughing, you're away. Dead easy, piece of cake, and you get great results. And those great results lead on to you thinking, oh, I can build a wagon. Why can't I build a coach? And then, oh, I can build a coach. Why can't I build a replacement chassis for that old loco? That's not very good. Oh, I can build a replacement chassis. Why can't I build a loco? And then out of nowhere, you've got a fleet of hundreds of kit-built locomotives that you can't buy, ready to run. They pull better loads. They look better. They have better presence about them. They sound better. This is the first step in helping level up your modelling, and it's easy. Have a go. And if you get stuck, chuck us an email, chuck us a message. I'll be more than happy to sit down over FaceTime with you, Zoom, talk about it on the club, whatever, to help you get the results you want. So, super. Brilliant. So we got a good couple of messages in the chat. Thanks, Steve, for watching. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, other Steve. Grant. Andrew says, well done, an interesting presentation. I destroyed a white metal kit about 40 years ago and haven't bothered since. Will I try again? Don't know. Well, if you use a variable temperature soldering iron on a very low heat and go in and out quite quick, there's no reason why you'd melt it. Just speed is the key. Even a very low temperature iron will melt a white metal wagon. To be fair, a hot day in Dubai will melt a white metal wagon. So just speed's the key with that one. Less haste, more speed, something like that. Anyway, brilliant. A lot of people saying they're inspired to have a go, which is amazing. It's exactly what we want to get out of these videos. We want you to have a go. Try yourself. Make mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Post your mistakes and talk about them, because in doing so, you show you're human. You show that you are learning and not perfect, and that means you encourage others to sort of own up to their mistakes, and other people will then chip in and say, try this, have a go at that. It's all building the collective of building the greater sense of community, which is what we're trying to achieve on the Rail Modelers Club. That we're only human, we make mistakes, we do modelling. Put all three together and you get a great community that's able to help each other with these sort of live videos and make better modelers out of everyone. So it's all for the greater good. Have a go. Don't be afraid to show your results and ask for help, because that's what at the end of the day, we're all here to help. Everyone is, and we're all here to give positive feedback. So on that note, I hope everyone has an absolutely amazing Christmas. That's me done now. We're pretty much done for Christmas. I'll still be sticking on the Rail Modelers Club. I have, if I can turn this around, in fact, if you can see, those two boards there is one half of my model railway that I've got to build, and those two boards there is the other half. So I've got plenty of work cut out for me. Bang. I've got plenty of work cut out for me over Christmas. I'll be posting away in the Rail Modelers Club, answering questions, so I'm still sticking around. So feel free to post questions, send me a message. Have a good Christmas, everyone. And I will see you all in the new year. So cheers, Dave and Jane. Thanks for sticking around for so long. Thanks everyone for watching. Very, very Merry Christmas. I want to go get a mince pie. I think I've earned one. Even though it's probably my 10th mince pie in the last 2 or 3 days, but we'll skip over that. Brilliant. Thanks everyone. Have an awesome Christmas. Great New Year. Stay safe. Happy modelling. And I'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Cheers for now.